It's time for the whole 9 yards. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ralph Ventre. It's week 5, and I'm ready to give you the whole 9 yards on NEC football. Sacred Heart and CCSU are idle. 7 teams are in action. 2 conference games. Watch me tackle that and more in our opening drive. I'll start with Duquesne, which is on the final leg of its 3-game road swing. The Dukes visit New Hampshire, a chance to make some noise against the CAA team. The Dukes are coming off an impressive road win last week. They pulled one out against previously 2-0 Dayton. It was a back-and-forth game. The 2 teams traded blows throughout. Duquesne answered the bell on a number of occasions. Reed Harrison Ducros with a key interception to deny Dayton in the red zone. The Dukes would score the winning touchdown, a 1-yard run by Mark Allen. He had a huge day. The backup running back, who was filling in for injured A.J. Hines, went for more than 200 yards from scrimmage. As for New Hampshire, they run the ball effectively too. They have a pair of primary ball carriers. As a team, they're averaging 5.4 yards per carry. That will be a challenge for a strong Duquesne front 7. Cam Carter, Mike O'Malley up front, Brett Zanato, Chris Favarosa, the linebackers. They are limiting opponents to 3.5 yards per rush this season. So we'll see which side has its way on Saturday. Run the ball effectively, stop the run. That's still a recipe for success on the road. Now, taking a look at the other half of the NEC's Steel City contingent, the Robert Morris Colonials picked up a huge road win at VMI last week. We'll have more on that victory later on in the show. Now, Robert Morris faces an even stiffer road test at undefeated Youngstown State. The Penguins rely heavily on their run game, averaging more than 300 rush yards per outing, averaging more than 44 points per game is Youngstown. The Colonials will look to counter with a run game of their own. Robert Morris saw Elijah Jackson go for over 100 yards for a second consecutive week. It was his 47-yard touchdown run that got the party started in the win over VMI. He'll go up against a defense that is a bit stronger and faster than what he saw last week. Nonetheless, he's had success against prime opponents in the past, had a solid day in the season opener at FBS member Buffalo. Robert Morris at Youngstown State, Saturday, ESPN+. As we do every week, we check in on reclassifying member Merrimack. The Warriors are moving on up from the Division II ranks, and they have a 2-0 home record thus far this season, but they're still looking for their first road win. They'll look to get that this week when they travel to Patriot League member Lehigh. You remember St. Francis earned a win over Lehigh in week 1. Lehigh enters this game at 0-3, averaging only 12 points per contest. Now on the other side, Lehigh will go up against the Merrimack defense that has had its moments thus far this year. In each of the Warriors' 2 games against D1 opponents, the MAC defense has returned an interception for a touchdown. Will the defense pass its road test against Lehigh? Well, you can find out live on the Patriot League Network. Still 2 conference matchups to tackle. First, it's up to Smithfield, Rhode Island. both teams looking to bounce back after suffering home losses to Ivy League members in Week 4. And it's homecoming day for the NEC opener in Smithfield. Bryant will look to build on the record passing performance that Corey Curtis produced last week, going up against Brown, earning his first collegiate start. Curtis threw for a program record 394 yards. Now this week he goes up against an SFU defense that leads the conference in pass defense efficiency rating. Safety Giovanni Sanders has done a nice job filling in for the injured Nick Ranella. Sanders with 3 interceptions in his last 2 games. It'll be St. Francis at Bryant, and one of these teams will be 1-0 in conference play come Saturday night. Watch it live on NEC Front Row. And now, our featured game of the week on ESPN3. It's a new New York FCS rivalry. Wagner hosting LIU. The Seahawks will be looking for a fresh start. They opened the season with 4 consecutive losses, including 2 to FBS members.
They know what it was those first 4 weeks, and they know, you look at, we played 2 FBS teams, and then we played Stony Brook, who's a, fully funded FCS and the CAA member, and then we had East Stroudsburg, who is 3-0 now. So, you take a look at all that, and it's like, hey, we really are concerned with conference play here in the Northeast Conference and here at Wagner. There's reason you play FBS teams, whether it's a financial reason or a student athlete experience reason, whatever it is, but you can't let it last more than that week, and you can't let it affect anything from a confidence standpoint or mental standpoint at all.
Wagner quarterback Christian Alexander Stevens has had a number of positive moments against FBS foes this year. He threw for over 200 yards and a touchdown at Florida Atlantic. In his last 2 games, he has only taken 1 sack and has been picked off just 1 time. Now, we'll talk about one of Alexander Stevens' top targets in our next segment. As for the other side, LIU playing its 2nd straight conference game. The Sharks opened with a home loss to Sacred Heart in Week 4. It's only their 3rd game of the season, though. LIU has only played twice in the season's first 4 weeks. In the second of those 2 games, quarterback Clay Beathard scored the program's first ever FCS touchdown, 20-yard run that gave LIU an early lead over Sacred Heart. Beathard is a junior college transfer, a rather capable signal caller who is extremely dangerous in the zone read offense. It's a battle for Empire State bragging rights. More importantly, a battle for a Northeast Conference victory. You can watch LIU at Wagner live on ESPN3. Paul Dottino, Jeff Feagles, and John Schmelk will have the call from Grimes Hill. Let's check in on the NEC stock market. I'll tell you whose value is all the way up. I mentioned Wagner quarterback Christian Alexander Stevens during the opening drive, and he has established quite a chemistry with junior receiver Josh DeCambrie. DeCambrie, a 6'4", 200-pound pass catcher out of Staten Island, made a viral catch back in training camp, but he's been more than an internet sensation thus far this season. 5 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown in Week 3 at Stony Brook, and then a career game in Boca Raton against FAU, 8 catches, 124 yards, and the Seahawks' lone touchdown against the FBS Owls. DeCambrie's success could very well be a product of his work ethic. I know for a fact that he has impressed head coach Jason Hoteling. In fact, Coach Haas was recently quoted as saying just how hard Josh has worked ever since the end of last year. Josh DeCambrie worked hard in the offseason, had himself a productive preseason camp, and now it's paying dividends on the field. His stock is on the way up. If you'll be kind enough to grant me a Twitter timeout, I'll take a look at the tweet sheet and share 2 Robert Morris related tweets this week. The first one from RMU alumnus Sam Anthony, former sports editor of the Century newspaper, and he points out the importance of the Week 4 road win at VMI. It's certainly never easy to win on the road. Robert Morris did so for the first time in 4 years, and that should be a huge confidence booster for a young Colonials team. Now moving on to Brad Gawley's tweet. Brad is a local sports anchor in the Detroit market, and he shared some great video this past Sunday following the Lions' victory over the Eagles in Philadelphia. As part of his post-game address, Lions head coach Matt Patricia awarded a game ball to Robert Morris alumnus Hank Fraley. Fraley, the most decorated offensive lineman in the history of the Northeast Conference, played 11 years in the NFL after an All-American career at RMU. He's moved on into the coaching profession, currently an assistant offensive line coach with the Lions. Of course, he was known for his playing days with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's what made this moment so special for Hank Fraley, who was back in Philadelphia for the first time since his dad passed away over a year ago. Stats amazing, bro. Well, what has me in a state of amazement this week? Well, it's that Bryant passing attack that came alive in Week 4 against Brown. I mentioned Corey Curtis's single-game record, 394 yards. And now looking deeper into that performance, you'll notice that Bryant was just the second team this season to have 2 100-yard receivers in the same game. Hunter Hill went for 107. Freshman Anthony Frederick, 119 yards. To say the least, head coach Chris Merritt liked what he saw from Hunter Hill and the Bryant receiving corps in Week 4.
Hunter's moved around for us. He's a stopgap filler for us. He's played inside, he's played outside. I think early on the struggles came more from just where he was playing in the offense. Now that's kind of changed a little bit. Now he's starting to get more looks at his position that he's playing right now, and we anticipate him to continue. It's what we brought him in for. You know, he gives us exactly what we need, and with him and Vinny and Anthony and just the whole crew of receivers that went out there, 55 passes, and as long as we continue to protect and give the quarterback time, he'll connect.
And there were plenty of connections against Brown, so much so that the Bulldogs nearly had a third 100-yard receiver. The sure-handed Vincent Nisavaccia caught 12 passes for 96 yards. So 21 passing first downs in the game, 3 reliable targets combining for 27 catches and 322 yards, all in 60 minutes. Now, stats amazing. And now it's time to hear from our boy Rick Saratella of NFL Draft Bible. Yes, folks, It's time for Ralph and Rick in the NEC Football Chop Shop. Back in the NEC Football Chop Shop, I'm Ralph Ventre. I have Rick Saratella on the line. Rick, we're going into week 5. What's on your mind?
Well, before we dive into the upcoming week, Ralph, what a thriller last week in Eastern Michigan with Central Connecticut State. I thought they had the upset lurking. You know, I was following you on Twitter for the updates as it happens. I think the Ralph Ventre jinx went into effect with the blocked punt. 18 seconds left. Really thought they were going to pull this one out. This game, I watched the highlights. It had some fireworks. It had a lightning delay. It had last-second heroics. Unfortunately, CCSU comes out on the short end of the stick, but they're going to be in good shape now as they enter their bye week. 3-1, 2 big games coming up out of the bye with Sacred Heart and Columbia. They got a hard-hitting linebacker in Trey Jones. Like you said, the defense played well. This is a high-octane Eastern Michigan offense. That quarterback, Mike Glass, they've been spraying points all over the place on the board early in the season. CCSU, this Trey Jones, 5 tackles, late-game interception, earned himself NEC Defensive Player of the Week in a losing effort. And you mentioned Tyshawn James. I mean, this guy's doing a little bit of everything. 2 catches in the fourth quarter for 118 yards. Also had 33 yards rushing, a rushing touchdown on the ground. So a lot to build off of. And, you know, head coach Ryan McCarthy said, obviously, it's not the outcome that we wanted. We have some stuff to clean up. But there are a lot of positives to take away from this game heading into their bye week as they continue to build momentum.
So now, what are you going to tell us about week 5? What are your predictions for this slate coming up on Saturday? A few big games. We got a conference game, LIU at Wagner. But then I know Duquesne has a big one. They're finishing up their 3-game road trip up against the CAA team.
Yeah, CAA, you know, always a tough opponent. And New Hampshire coming off a last-second field goal win as time expired to get their first victory on the board. They're 1-2, but remember, up until last season, they were in the FCS playoffs for 14 consecutive seasons. So never an easy matchup against New Hampshire. As you mentioned, 3rd game in a row on the road for Duquesne. Now they are 2-1. And last week, you know, talk about an unsung hero. Mark Allen takes over for A.J. Hines in that backfield. We talked about that dual threat backfield. Hines on the bench due to injury. In steps Allen, 30 carries, shows he could be a workhorse back, gains 168 yards on the ground, 201 yards on the day, a pair of touchdowns, and it's got to feel good because his fellow Penn State transfer Sterling Jenkins blocking up front for him, leading the way, leading the charge for this Duke's offense. But, you know, a big win for them, 35-31 over Dayton. And this Duquesne team now is in position to kind of, we talked about Central Connecticut. I think Duquesne is going to be their number 1 challenger.
I'll be watching them as Duquesne takes on New Hampshire. And I guess this will do it for our Week 5 edition of the NEC Football Chop Shop on the whole 9 yards. I'm Ralph Ventre. He's Rick Saratella. And we'll be back with more next week. So that'll just about do it for our Week 5 show. 7 teams will take to the gridiron this week. 2 NEC games. St. Francis at Bryant on NEC Front Row and the NEC On The Run app. The featured matchup, Long Island University at Wagner on ESPN3 and the ESPN app. I'm Ralph Ventre. Thank you for watching the whole 9 yards. Enjoy the games, and I'll see you again next week.